Hello, hello. I am so excited to bring my sister-in-law, Rachel Morgan, to help you learn more about effective communication. Rachel is an extremely successful sales coach and prior to that worked at Pandora and turned around, I believe, two failing stores, which is amazing. So, including one in downtown Seattle and then one in the suburbs of Seattle, Linwood. I can't wait to bring her expertise to you so you can not only, this is not only useful if you sell something, because we're always selling ourselves on anything that we're doing. So hopefully she joins us soon. Because I know, like I said, I know for myself, in the pandemic, I have not had as much experience as usual with talking to people, even just going to parties and communicating with them as effectively as I did before when I had a lot more practice. So I'm excited. Hopefully she can give us some really good tips on how we can be the most effective communicators we can be. Come on. Come on, Instagram. There we
Hello.
go. Hi.
It always takes a second for Instagram to do its thing, right?
Yeah, it
Well,
took
good
forever.
morning or
Good morning.
good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, right? It's not morning for everyone. So I'm so excited to chat with you today about how to have more effective conversations. And I got just the tail end of what you were saying is, during COVID, um, you recognize that there was a need to be a better communicator. So I love that. That's a great example of a time where communication is really important.
Well, and since COVID, we've gotten a little bit out of practice with certain kinds of communication.
Yes, yes. Not being around people as much, relying on text and video. Absolutely.
hmm So, why is it important for us to be better communicators? Like, what can that do for us to add to our lives?
Right. So communication is something that we do all day long, right? With our friends, our family, our coworkers, our teammates, our customers. We are always like communicating somehow, whether it's non-verbally, like over body language, over our words. It's something that we get a lot of practice with, really. Um, but improving your communication has so many rewards, right? Like it can improve the relationship that you have with people, with your customers, with your team, right? It can build trust, right? That someone sees you as a trustworthy person based on how you speak and carry yourself. Um, and oftentimes, if we aren't clear on communicating, we can end up in disagreements, right? Or we feel disappointed. It's usually the reason why we get into arguments, which we don't want. So, learning how to be a more effective communicator can help us avoid that and in our relationships with our friends and of course our spouse or our loved ones, or even
It's also
just like
just more fulfilling, that not only the conversation's more effective, they're
yes,
more, it's just better for you. You ever leave a conversation with somebody and you're like, that was amazing. I love that. And it doesn't
mm-hmm.
necessarily mean that you talked the whole time. In fact, usually that's means, and like, I'll walk
Right,
away. I'm a talker. I'll walk away and I'll be like, just talked the whole time. Like, that wasn't great for anybody.
right, absolutely. You can walk away with a more meaningful conversation with someone, and there's so many ways to go about that, of course, but that is such a huge benefit, right? Like knowing, like, wow, like you said, like I feel like I got something from that, and it leaves a really lasting impression on people too.
hmm Yeah. So, what is it? People don't necessarily remember exactly what you say, but how you made them feel.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah.
And so that can come through with body language, the words we use, the inflection on our words. And so that goes into communication. And so, obviously, I'm teaching you some sales skills here, right? Like how we talk to people, the way that we enunciate our words. But it really is such an important skill, no matter what you're doing, right? Whether we're talking about what we want for dinner or, making plans with a friend or something, being able to communicate what you want or even like you said, maybe having just a meaningful conversation. You're sitting down with someone and they need to be heard or seen, and being able to communicate that you're here for them is really important.
Well, and selling isn't always just selling a product. Like, if
Mm-mm.
I want to go to a certain restaurant, I might need to sell that restaurant to the
Right.
group or, whatever it is.
Exactly, exactly. Or selling where you want to eat to your spouse, or
Mhm.
um, a decision at the store. Maybe you're deciding between two different things. And of course, we're talking about food. I love it since you're a nutrition coach. But yes, we're always making decisions and we're always trying to communicate what we want to someone else. And there's,
Yeah, I'm always telling my clients, if they want to eat healthier and they're going to eat out with a friend, there's nothing wrong with that. But often that friend or the group is waiting for someone to pitch a restaurant. And so I'm
right?
like, hey, have a list of ones that you know have good choices for you. And then when it's like, hey, where do we want to go to eat? You can sell that place like really easy, and then you know what you're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know it's going to be a good time, right? So, it can be, we can use this in so many different ways.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely.
so, how can we start improving like, what are some quick and easy tips to start improving our communication skills?
So I think, one of the most important things is when you're communicating, you really need to make people feel safe, and you want them to feel heard and seen, regardless of the situation. So, a great way to start doing that is to take interest in others and make the conversation about them. So, ask about their friends, their family, any events coming up, travel plans, maybe what they're up to that day, and really just have like if you're in business, a non-business conversation. Just check in with people, ask how they are. you know I know whenever I've been to an event or I'm catching up with someone, when someone says, hey Rachel, how's your husband, or how's your dog been, or something, I'm like, wow, they took interest, and they're curious to know. And I think that's an excellent way to just show people, like, I've heard you in the past, I'm interested in now, let's talk about you, I want to hear what's going on, right? So really kind of almost taking the initiative and asking. And then I would
Yeah.
also, yeah, okay, sorry. I don't
One
know if
thing
you
I
were
was going
saying anything.
to add
Yeah.
to that, or something I heard, and you can tell me if this is
Mm-hmm.
true, is that the best thing you can do is say, how are you doing? And then, like, don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if they say fine, be like, still don't say anything for like 5 seconds. And 5 seconds is all you need. And they'll like, because our default response is, oh, I'm good. And if I wait another
It
five
is.
seconds, I might get more.
Right. So it's when you're right. And I think that's actually um, a really good point too. Sometimes when we ask a question, we keep asking. It's like a panic response. And so sometimes it's okay to just ask and pause and listen. And that, active listening is very hard to wait for someone else, but it helps them feel safe and not like you're asking out of obligation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Especially, I mean, in a sales situation too, if you're trying to sell yourself, don't feel like you have to give everything up front, right? Take a little interest in the person in front of you, say what you need to say, and then step back and wait.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard.
It's very hard, isn't it? We all can improve on in our active listening skills and just taking a breath, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I know that's definitely, it's simple but difficult at the
Yes,
same time.
right. So I would say the next thing, so I have 5 different tips that I would recommend. So number 2 would be to ask a lot of open-ended questions. So to kind of explain what an open-ended question is, it's a question that opens up the conversation. So they typically start with who, what, where, when, why, versus a close-ended question that gets you a yes or no response. So is there, can I, do you? So it might sound like, do you want Chinese for dinner? Or if we're talking about sales, is there anything I can help you with? You're typically going to get a yes or no response, and that's actually going to put you in a place where you feel like you have to ask more and you can't pause when you ask a close-ended question. So when you come from this angle of asking an open-ended question like, how are you today? Or what brought you in? Or how does Chinese sound for dinner? You're going to get a more meaningful response, and it gives them a chance to answer it better. right? It puts you in that position where you're not feeling like you have to keep asking more. So it's another great approach that also, when you're asking questions about non-business related things.
Right. When you want a bigger response, if you really want Chinese, you
Yeah,
might
right.
just say, "How's Chinese sound?" And they'll be like, if they really hate it, they'll say no. But otherwise, they'll be like, "Oh, sounds fine."
Right. They might be like, no, that doesn't sound so great to me tonight. I don't want something heavy, right? You can say,
Right.
oh, okay, well, what doesn't sound heavy to you? Like you can keep
Right.
asking.
If they say no, then maybe asking open-ended questions so you get more out of it. But if you want a yes or no, like just think about, what do I want from this interaction? Do I want a
Right.
yes or no answer, or I want to have a more
That's
fulfilling
true.
conversation? Um,
Right.
yeah.
And I think when we ask more open-ended questions too, we learn more. And going into the conversation with this intent to learn and not really holding on
Mhm.
to expectations is really important too, no matter who you're talking to, because people can teach you a lot. And I also think that makes us better well spoken to when we can listen to others and how they talk and what they have to say. And it helps us understand where they're at as well. And we're not assuming.
Yeah. You know, my mom always said about assuming, and I've learned that that wasn't just her. That's a normal phrase. My mom made up a lot of things, but
I have a feeling I know exactly what that phrase is.
yeah.
I've used it over the years.
So
Um,
what? Oh, sorry. Go
mhm,
ahead.
no. Um, my third point would be that a really good way to communicate is to summarize what you hear back. So if you're in a conversation with someone and maybe they're telling you something really important, you can say, okay, so what I hear you saying is X, Y, and Z, or to clarify what you just told me. That way you're repeating it back. You can use their own words, which is really powerful, right? We talk about that a lot in the marketing and sales world to mirror back what you hear, but it also
Mhm.
demonstrates that you heard them, that you were present, that you were listening, and it also forces you to also listen more as well. Um, and I think that, I don't know about you, but when I repeat something back neurologically, I feel like I remember it better because now I have not only heard it, I have said it and had to think about what I'm saying as well.
And it's also a good response if you don't know what they're talking about. So if
Mm-hmm.
someone's like, "Oh, you hear about the Mariners?" and you're like, "The Mariners?" Like, I've no idea what's going on with the Mariners. But now it's like, instead of being like, "Oh, what's going on?" Like, they're just going to naturally think that I'm on board, even though I have no idea what they're talking about. And maybe as they continue,
Yeah.
I'll catch on that the Mariners are in the playoffs this year. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Which is so exciting for Seattle. Like that has not happened in a very long time.
yeah, apparently they would start everything about the Mariners, who are the longest playoff drought in MLB history. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't even care about baseball, but I know that. And that's how they would introduce the Mariners every time. So now it's like, okay, we can stop.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you don't know, like people are like, oh, they're just talking about something, you're like, you can just respond by mirroring them.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you don't talk about the Mariners forever, but
Right.
a little bit.
Well, I think summarizing it's like, okay, heard you saying this. I'm not familiar, right? Can you explain more to me? Like, I want to be on your level. And I think it helps energize people and it starts making people feel really good and feel really seen. And when people have these really positive emotions with you, they're going to start associating those positive emotions with you. Don't we want people to feel good about us when they interact? We don't want them to walk away and be like, oh, that was horrible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a really good way to like improve your active listening skills, right? And to show like I hear you, and then you're practicing using someone else's words, which will naturally improve your communication because you're learning other ways how to say things as well.
Yeah. But
And also,
I just love the idea of just repeating like
yeah,
the Mariners, like in an exciting, because it's like easy. It's an easy stepping stone when you're first starting to do this.
right,
So
right, yeah. And it's such a simple word. You're like, what's going on with the Mariners? So
yeah,
first of all, there's an open-ended question, and there's using the exact same words back and trying to mirror even their um, inflection of how they've said it as well, right? And now you're getting hyped up. Like it makes for a much better conversation overall. And
I love that.
also really good in sales, right? When you're trying to sell a product and you're talking about what you do, when a client is telling you something, say, okay, so what I'm hearing you say from this conversation is X, Y, and Z. Did I hear right? Or can you clarify that better? It's just a really, really excellent way to sell. And then it makes sure that you're both aligned and on the same page going into the next part.
Well, and I know I have a lot of followers who are other coaches, and
Yeah.
you're selling what you are wanting clients to do to them every week or however often you
Mm-hmm.
talk with them. So they say people don't buy coaching, they buy coaches. Like people
Mm-hmm.
want to work with a person, not a robot, who is responding to them, who cares. So showing
Right.
that you care, that's showing you care.
Right. Especially in the work that you do, it's very vulnerable. It's, you're a nutrition coach. Like you are weight can be a very sensitive topic for people. And so
Mm-hmm.
you want to make them trust you. You want them to feel safe coming to you. You want them to feel seen and heard and build that connection. And so again, really showing interest in the people that are in front of you, summarizing will just, oh my gosh, like will blow people away. And it sounds like the easiest thing to do. It really does. But when you go shopping, take notice of how many people really actually try to get to know you or ask you the right questions or summarize. It's actually not as common as you would think. It's not being practiced.
Mm-mm. It's not. Not at
So
all.
So my other two tips are much less hardy, but I would say for number four, to try and be really present. So when you're having a conversation with someone, try to stay off your phone. Try to focus on them. Eye contact's really important. Nonverbal communication actually makes up 55% of communication, which is outstanding when we think about it, because we think that the words we're using are actually more impactful, but it's actually our body. And so when we're demonstrating that we're on our phone or we're distracted or we're not paying full attention, it's saying, I don't really care,
Yeah.
right? And so making sure that you can be present is very important, especially when you're having a deeper conversation. It's a different thing if you're like a quick question and maybe you're like in the middle of something, but if you're trying to have a more effective conversation, put everything aside, turn it off, put it down, walk away from it, and just focus on the person in front of you.
Yeah,
Um,
don't get out your phone to show pictures or even to look something up. And if you really have to, like, oh, we're trying to book a movie time, then that's different. You're both on the same page
yes.
of like you're on your phone, but tell them like, hey, I'm gonna go look at the local
Mm-hmm.
theater and look up movie times for this weekend. Or I'm looking at my calendar, let's plan another time to hang out. But otherwise, like, just leave your phone away. You don't need to look up
Mm-hmm.
who the actor was in that movie. It's not going to really add to the conversation.
No, and actually, here's a bonus point. What I just heard you say. It's explaining what you're doing as you're doing it makes you a better communicator as well. So, like you said, hey, I want to go see a movie with you. That sounds great. I'm going to grab my phone and let's look it up together instead of just grabbing your phone and not explaining it. Because someone might be like, wow, that was kind of rude. I feel like they didn't hear me. They just grabbed their phone. They ended the conversation. Like, what's happening? Right. And so, being able to communicate each step of the way with the person that you're talking to is also a very important skill, whether in sales or with a friend or a spouse or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Will make so that's your little bonus. That's 6 points there, but that's an excellent point to bring up. So even in my fine jewelry days, I would be showing products and I didn't have something in front of me. So I might say, hey, give me a second. I'm going to go ahead and go step aside and go grab this. I'll be right back. And that way it communicates, I'm here. I'm still present. I still want to be a part of this, but give me a second. And they'll understand. I think people are more understanding when you explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I even saw this a lot with like new employees. They're really afraid to say like they're new. But I think if you communicate what's happening, people are more understanding.
Well, if you think about it from yourself as a point of view of the customer, I'm like, oh, like if a cashier says, oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is my second day, sorry if I'm a little slow, I'm
Mm-hmm.
super understanding of them being really slow.
Right. We've all been there.
Fine.
We've all
Yeah.
had a first day, right? Or even if you're like, you know what, I've never ordered Chinese food. I keep going back to Chinese food, I know. But if you're like, I've never ordered Chinese food before, I don't know what to order, like you're communicating what's actually happening. But
Mm-hmm.
I also feel that happens in a really safe place, right? And that comes from when people listen and hear or feel heard. So, okay, so my last point, just to bring us up and title together, is avoiding the blame game. So often when things don't go right, so this is more about a disagreement. So how to be more effective in a disagreement is we go, well, it was your fault. You said this, so this is why I did that. And we don't often take accountability for our own actions. So when we have a disagreement or something like that comes up, aim to understand if you aren't getting it. Ask questions. Ask people, well, I know you did this. It didn't feel great when you did that, right? So it goes into our bonus point. And try to ask your open-ended questions and take interest in why they did something. Try to understand. Because most people that we communicate with aren't malicious. They're not doing things to really hurt us. And often when we get in a disagreement, we're like, they're so mean. And we think that they're trying to hurt us in these moments. And so we tend to blame, and then it like spirals and it gets worse. So if you just kind of step back and you try to understand and you ask questions and you don't blame, it can really make for a better argument that will end much quicker. So, maybe you might see this with a customer as well. Maybe an upset customer comes to you and you want to be like, oh, we would never do that. I would never say that to you. And so what often happens is the business wants to be defensive. But if you go, I totally hear you. I'm so sorry that happened. You sympathize, tell me a little bit more about what happened. Like, walk me through it so that I can understand what happened and fix this. You'll have a much better response from this, and those people will feel heard and seen and appreciate that you took the time to actually understand what they had to say.
Well, and I'll often ask, like, thank you so much for bringing this to my attention. Can you tell me a bit more about it? And sometimes it's a complete misunderstanding. And sometimes, uh, sometimes there's is something that needs to be fixed in the way I do something. Or maybe I wrote something in a way that was not and they read it in a way I didn't intend it to be read. But at the same time, maybe that's something that I need to address.
Right.
And maybe not. I had a person who was upset at me because my Fitness Pal charged them $50 for a premium.
Oh, no.
And I don't own my Fitness Pal. And I had to
Right.
explain to them that I wish I owned my Fitness Pal. I'd be a
Yeah.
millionaire, but I don't. And I would do things very differently. But, sometimes it's a misunderstanding on their part of like, I don't really have anything to do. It's just a platform I use. So,
Right.
yeah.
Miscommunication is often the reason why people get upset and disappointed. And so, bringing us back to the very beginning is improving your communication skills can often lead to less disagreements and less disappointment, but we're not perfect. Oh my gosh. Like, we all can do better with our communication, no matter how much we understand it or practice it. Like, there's always room for improvement. There's always better ways to do things. So just know we're not perfect. Neither of us are perfect. Like, we can always do better, and it just starts with trying and being more aware.
Yeah, yeah. And if someone you have a disagreement with or a business that makes something right,
Mm-hmm.
that's usually a strong relationship with that
Correct.
person or with that business or with
Every
that.
time I've had an upset customer, they always become my best customer, believe it or not, because we like went through this really emotional thing together, and we were like, we're in this, right? And you took the time to listen. You've learned their situation, they've trusted you, and you just get to know them. And now you're like, okay, I want to keep up with you now to make sure you're still happy, right? So it's upset customers can definitely become your best customers.
Well, and you can learn something, and if one person's thinking it, saying it, 10 people are thinking
Mm-hmm. Most people do not speak up when there's a problem. I mean, that's a
it.
totally different conversation with upset. But
Yeah, we could go on forever, but
right. So, yeah, okay. So to kind of just summarize for anyone who is tuning in, number one is take interest in others and make the conversation about them. So ask about personal related things that are non-business related, like how their day is, travel, family, friends, pets. Like, I see little Clyde right now. And of course, we love little Clyde. Um, he's so cute. And I know I should be asking questions about Clyde right now, but number two, try to ask open-ended questions to get a more open conversation to help you understand. Number three, summarize and repeat back what you heard to clarify. Number four, be present, put that phone down, give your eye contact. Number five is avoiding the blame game. So aim to understand, don't point fingers. And then my bonus point, oh my gosh, I totally lost it. I was so focused on Clyde
uh,
because he's so cute.
disagreements.
Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed I forgot.
Something about disagreements, wasn't it?
um, oh my gosh. Well, if
I'm
anyone's
also
listening, I'm
focused
sure
on
you're
Clyde.
like, how embarrassed I
So,
forgot.
I mean, he's
Because
so cute right
I
now.
know puppies just, they're good. They just break the ice. So if you ever struggling to get the conversation going with someone, bring a dog into it or a pet. They just make
Oh,
everything feel better. Oh, little Clyde. For those who don't know, it's Bonnie and Clyde, which I think is very genius for your pet name. So,
yeah. He's definitely I think he makes I think it'd be interesting to do sometime another live for what can our pets teach us about effective communication. That could be fun.
oh, they can. They have a lot of patience. They make people feel real special. Yeah, that would
Hmm.
be a fun topic
Clyde's
for sure.
really good at it too. Everyone's like, "Oh, Clyde loves me," and I'm like, "Clyde loves everybody."
Well, but I mean, yeah, that's a whole, that's why people have emotional support animals, right?
Yeah.
So, well, okay, I hope I covered everything about communication. I hope that you feel empowered and excited to walk away to put some of these skills into play. Even if it's just tonight when I'm sitting down with my friend or I'm on a phone call today, I'm gonna like actually ask a question back and see what happens. I would love to hear about it. Reach out to me, tell me how it went, or reach out to Bonnie. Let us know. Because it really like can make such a difference on your life and everything. And your friends will appreciate it. You'll just have better relationships with people, you know?
Mhm.
And who doesn't want that? We're all craving connection. We've had such a lack of it the past few years. So I encourage you to practice it and reach out and let me know how it goes.
Sounds good.
So, anything else that we missed, Bonnie?
No, but for those of you just tuning in, if you Rachel will be posting this after so that people can watch from the beginning because I think there's been a lot of helpful tips here. And thank you so much for joining us.
Oh,
Bye.
thank you. Yes,
Have a
please
good
reach
one.
out. Yes. Oh, bye, little
We got a
Clyde,
little
and to
tongue
everyone
sticking
who.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, he's so cute. Okay. Obviously, I know Bonnie and Clyde in person, but Clyde's little tongue always sticks out. It's the cutest little thing. It looks like he's sticking his tongue out at you.
Oh, God.
He's the cutest little dog. So, all right. Well, thank you, both of you, for having me, and thank you for everyone that listened. And if you are one of Bonnie's clients, we will be going live inside her private Facebook group to have a further conversation, and I hope to see you guys there as well. So, all
Bye.
right. Bye.